Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today, we are going to be doing a little bit of a level set and reset, knowing that we have made it through the full first month of the year. We're partway through the second month of the year, and you're either moving forward, have great momentum, feel really good about how things are going, which is great, or you're having that experience that so many business owners do where they have their oh blank moment and realize maybe I bit off a little bit more than I could chew, or the way that I was thinking of approaching this year might not have been super realistic. And it can be really deflating when that happens. And we want to make sure that is not the case and that you can regain that momentum and really set yourself up for a whole lot of success and scale, including in Q1. Just because it's partway over does not mean there is not still a ton of opportunity to get where you wanted to go. So that's what we're going to be diving into today. But before we do, I just wanted to take a quick pause and celebrate that we have just celebrated our 4-year anniversary of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. So I just wanted to take a moment and say thank you so much for tuning in. Whether you tune in every now and then, whether this is your very first episode, or whether you are one of the loyal listeners who has been with me from the very beginning, I just wanted to say thank you so much for making this possible. Thank you for the reviews and the feedback that you share publicly on Apple and Spotify and that you email me privately. I just so appreciate you. I appreciate you taking the time and prioritizing this podcast. I hope you get so much value out of it, and it's really helping you with your business scaling journey. And as I look ahead, as I look at what I want for the next 4 years and what I see for the podcast, I've got so many incredible ideas, and I'd love to hear some of yours. So if you want to reach out and share what you love most or what you'd love to see me do or change up, I love hearing from you. So head to info@leanoutmethod.com and just share your ideas, share your feedback, share your inspiration with me. And that will help me shape what I'm going to be doing over these next 4 years and beyond. But with that, let's dive into today's episode. So, like I said, I hope that you are one of the businesses who is charging forward and feeling fantastic about how this year is going. But for any of you, especially those of you in the US, you know it has been a really challenging start to the year. There has been just stuff coming out of left field every other day, a lot of tragedies, a lot of things that can very much take your mind out of the detail of your business because there's just so much going on that feels so incredibly important and so incredibly heavy in a lot of ways. And so that I know has impacted the momentum and the movement forward for a lot of business owners. But also, January is that really interesting month, right? Everyone thinks new year, new you come out of the holidays. There's usually all of this excitement about all the things that are going to get done. And what I find most business owners do, even though they probably joke about it, they probably know they do it, they probably say they're not going to do it, and yet they still do it. And it's they look at their year, they look at everything that they want to achieve for the year, and they go into the new year so excited that they way overstack Q1. And within Q1, they way overstack January, right? If they tripled their team size, it wouldn't have been possible to get done all of the things that they went into January with the intention of doing. And this time in the year, you usually have that wake up call where you realize, okay, maybe I bit off a little bit more than I could chew, not possible to move things forward. And when that happens, what is really positive to do and proactive to do is to take a pause and to reassess and adjust your goals. Look at what you said you wanted, look at what you've committed to, and make whatever adjustments that you need to so that you can keep moving forward and you could realign your team on what the very most important things are. Not all of the things that you want to do, but what the very most important and most needle moving activities are. because what you don't want to do is kind of accept defeat. And I see this from a lot of business owners like, well, I guess I'm going to do this again in Q2. Like Q1's gone. And it's not. You're only partway through Q1, right? Just because you said you were going to do something, just because it was in your plan, just because it might have been something you communicated to the team or even communicated publicly, you are where you are. And that has to be okay, because the only thing you can do, you cannot change what happened before. You can only change what you do going forward. So don't accept defeat. Go ahead and reassess and look at what can you do that's really meaningful to close out February really strong and then to close out March really strong, right? Even if you had nothing of significance happen in January from a revenue perspective, or even from maybe completing specific projects or goals, I bet you made a lot of headway. You put a lot of great foundational things in place. You made a lot of great connections and you did a lot of things that will come back to you if you keep focused, keep your team focused, and keep moving things forward. The other thing to keep in mind, and some of the chatter that I'm hearing, some of the questions that I'm getting in my certification programs inside my private client calls is, all right, nobody's buying. What's happening with everything that is going on in the US with all the uncertainty? People are in this freeze pattern. People aren't making decisions. Like, I know the buying cycle is longer and slower, but this is different than I was expecting. And people are starting to get paranoid. People are starting to get worried. People are starting to get into a little bit of that reactive, should I pivot state. And I just want to caution you against that. Yes, there are some things going on that are slowing down in some cases, some of the buying cycles and some of the decisions that people are making about where they're investing their money and where they're investing their time. Absolutely. But what I wanna say is this doesn't feel like one of those times to be reactionary. This feels like one of those times to be introspective and reflective. And what I mean by that is if you have already done so much of the hard work to get tapped back into what the current problems are of your market, of your buyer, if you have made pivots and changes to your programs and your offers to really meet people where they're at and give them what they need to reposition your messaging, right? If you did a lot of that work last year that I talked about so much on the podcast, and hopefully you are following along and making some of those changes. If you already did a lot of that, then this is not the time to do more. This is the time to make micro adjustments and to reset expectations versus making changes. Now, if you did not do those things last year, then this might be the time to really reflect on what's truly working and what's not, right? If you're hoping that things go back to the way they were 2 years ago, or you're still marketing or selling that same way, you're going to have challenges. It's not just because of the month we had in January. It's something that's going to continue to be an issue. So kind of look at where you are at on that spectrum of things. Do you feel like you really did a lot of the right things? You've got a lot of the right things, and you're just a little disappointed that people aren't buying quicker or that people have been holding off on some of those decisions so far this year? If that's the case, don't get panicked and don't make big pivots or get reactionary and do something you will later regret. But if you didn't make those changes yet and you know you need to, use this if it's a slower period as the opportunity and the catalyst to go in and very strategically and intentionally make some of those changes. Again, the one thing you don't ever want to do in business, and it's so easy to say when you are in a place where you're not really worried about revenue coming in, but you don't want to really reactionarily pivot. You don't want to do something in reactive mode. You want to do something from a place of intentionality and strategy. And if you feel like you can't personally do that right now, because it's like, yeah, that sounds great. And where's the revenue coming from? Then get somebody to support you with that. Put time on my calendar. Call a business bestie. Find a coach who you really trust or an advisor or consultant who you really trust. Find somebody who can help you to look at it through the longer term lens balanced with your very immediate short term needs. You need to be looking through both of those lenses. And a little trick, something that I do with myself. especially if I end up in places where I start to get a little worried or I start to feel myself maybe making decisions from not the right place, not a place of possibility, but more a place of lack or a place of restriction. Is I A, take a pause. I don't try to make a decision in that moment because I know I need to step away from it. But B, I think about what would I tell a client to do? If this were a client who were bringing this challenge to me, what would I tell them to do and what's in their best interest right now, today, in this moment? And what's in their best interest 6 months and 6 years from now? And I always look at it through that lens. And sometimes I'm too worked up where I can't coach myself, but a lot of times I can. It just gives me a little bit of that perspective to bring me back down to earth a little bit and say, okay, all right, this did not go the way I wanted, but it's okay. I've got this. Here's what I'm going to do. Right. And so when I find myself in those moments, that's how I tend to approach it. So that's something else that you might want to experiment with if you don't feel like you have that person that you can call that can help you to do that. So, one of the things I shared in my episode where I was looking at what I thought this year was going to bring was the concept of necessary endings. And I remember a client of mine many years ago had talked about a book with that title, and I've still never read the book. One of these days I'm gonna have to look up the book. I'm not even sure what it means, but that phrase just always stuck in my head. And I really, really like that phrase. And I know in my own business that has played out. There have been a lot of necessary endings. Some of them unexpected, some of them planned so far this year. And already we're only 5 weeks into the year, and there have already been a lot of necessary endings. But I'm finding that I'm seeing this across the board with so many of the people that I'm talking to. So if you're seeing that as well, that's something else that sometimes it's just good to know that that's something that other people are experiencing because it can feel like your entire world is blowing up. You're like, what just happened? This just changed, and this just went away, and this client decided they're leaving, and this team member decided they're quitting and I have to fire this person or, there's all these different things that happen. And sometimes it can feel a little bit like, what's wrong with my business? What's wrong with my market? What's wrong with my offer? What's wrong with me? Right. That's a lot of the questions I've been getting asked is what's wrong? What's wrong with me? What am I not seeing? What am I doing wrong? And the reality is, I don't think most people are actually doing anything wrong. And if that's your experience too, I bet you probably aren't either. Again, it's just that phase that we're going through. It's some of the energy of this year where we are just not bringing forward the stuff that is not right for us, whether that's offers, whether that's clients, whether that's team members, whether that's things in our personal life. And so, if you're experiencing those endings, know that in a lot of cases, they are necessary endings and they are going to propel you forward. They are going to create the space for what you need next. But that being said, you also want to be really, again, intentional and focused and proactive. Word you will hear me use all the time. So, with that, let's dive into what to practically do to go ahead and set yourself up for a lot of success this year and especially this quarter if you don't feel like you have that momentum behind you up until this point. So, again, first thing to do, as I shared, is reassess and adjust your goals. Do not assign any guilt, do not assign any blame. Look at things very objectively. Look at what you had planned, what you had committed to, and try to assess why are you not where you needed to be? Was it something that happened externally? Was it something internally? Is there a lesson learned that you could take away from it? Like maybe don't try to start 15 projects January 1st. I'm saying that very lovingly because pretty much every business owner I know does that every year. No, 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 I'm not going to start everything at once. And I talk to them week 2 or 3 of January and they have all of their things in flight at once. So, did you just simply take on too much or was there something that was fully out of your control? So, just very objectively get clear on where should you have been? Where are you? And what got in the way? What can you take away from it? What can you learn from it? Again, do not assign judgment to it. Just seek to understand and seek to learn. Then get really clear on what you need to focus on next. Like strip everything away, lean things out, pick one thing if you can. If you could pick one goal and only one goal to focus on, if you could pick one project and only one project to focus on, what would it be? Now, that might not be realistic. You might need to have other things in flight, but start with what your number one thing is. And that number one thing better be aligned with the vision that you have for this year. If you are feeling the crunch from a revenue perspective, then it better be things that's bringing in immediate revenue or that is setting you up for whatever you're doing to be bringing revenue in. So if you have a launch coming at the end of the month, for example, or next month, then this month better be getting ready for that so that you can have the best possible results. To refocus your team and get them reset on that one core thing, you can create a KPI that everybody is working towards. I definitely recommend doing a level set. You might even want to do a mini Q1 planning all over again in the middle of Q1. That I've been known to do in the past. I've been known to do it in my own business and in clients' businesses. And it is the, hey, listen, when we set out, here was what we had planned. The reality is things are not progressing the way that we thought. So let's do a retake. We want to make sure that we end this quarter really successfully. Here's what we are now committing to doing. Here's what it's going to take to get there. Tell me what you all have on your plate. How can we pivot? Here's what I think our priorities are. What am I not thinking of? What else do we need to do? And as a team, you collectively agree to what everyone's going to do, what everyone's going to stop doing if necessary. And more importantly, you get the team together with everyone going in the same direction, with the same vision, the same goals, and you have that collective ownership over the outcomes that you're trying to achieve for the quarter. Make sure that you break things down into actionable plans. So, again, we only have about half of the quarter left, a little more than half the quarter left. So, make sure that everyone is super clear on what they need to do. So, in addition to making sure that you're having the conversations and talking about what's important as a team, make sure it's actually in your project management tool as well. Make sure everyone has that accountability, that clarity, that they know where to go if they have any questions about what's needed so nothing stalls. If you have a system and a process for how you work together as a team, make sure that you are reminding everyone to follow it and to breathe life back into it if they've been kind of going off the rails a little bit. And if you don't, it is a really great time to implement something, right? If you are in trying to catch up in Q1 mode, you're not going to go off and implement some big thing, but you can very quickly put something in place where at the end of every single day, people share out what they accomplished, where they're blocked, what they consider a win, and how what they're doing is contributing towards the goal that everyone agreed to. There's little things that you can do to keep everyone focused and for you to have that visibility into where things are so there's no surprises at the end of February and certainly no surprises at the end of March. There's a lot that you can't control, right? You can't control when clients say yes. You can influence it, but you can't control it. But you can put practices in place for how your team works and help ensure that everyone stays focused, and that will give you the best possible chance for success. The other thing is end of January is Chinese New Year. It's also when we have the first new moon of the year. There is all of this new energy. And honestly, for me, I tend to feel like the start of the year is at the end of January, beginning of February. Not that January is a wash. I have had some of my most successful months in business in January, especially since I help people with planning. So a lot of that happens in January. And I've been quite busy so far in January with VIP days and helping people plan and refresh their offers and all of the things that we've been talking about in this episode. I am in deep doing with my clients right now. So January can absolutely be a really great momentum builder and a really successful month. But I feel like where I see most of the momentum really start to pick up across businesses is in February. People are out of the holiday slump. They've got their groove back. Things are moving forward. They've kind of done whatever their, oops, we committed to too much thing that businesses tend to do in January. And all of a sudden, people get serious. In February, the sleeves are rolled up. People are heads down. They're more focused and things start to flow. And by the end of March, that is when things really start to go. So again, some businesses have fantastic Q1s. A lot of businesses Q1's a little rocky, but I find that the most momentum starts to build in the second half of the quarter. So you are set up and primed for that to happen. Just make sure that you're following these steps. Reassess your goals, reset them if needed, reframe where things are with your team, get everyone laser focused on what's most important, what's going to move the needle, and what's going to take you towards those refined goals that you've set. Set a KPI that everybody could move towards in some means of communication as a team and visibility as a team. If it's in your project management tool or if it's even in Slack for right now, if you don't have a good system in place, put something in place. Don't wait for the perfect system. Do something right now to keep everyone laser focused and get that momentum moving forward. And the most important thing is don't panic and don't get into a place of reactivity where you end up making changes in the short term that may end up impacting your business in the long term. If you are starting to feel a little panicked about things or a little unsure or uncertain about things, if things aren't going the way that you want and you're starting to equate, well, if you end up in that place, find someone that you can talk to who can help you look at it very objectively or go through some of the tips and techniques that I shared with you in the episode. Because while this year is off to a bit of a heavy start for a lot of people, especially following what was a really challenging year last year, I still believe there is so much potential ahead. There is so much possibility and there is so much success and scale if you can get really clear on what's most important, if you can stay laser focused on what's most important, and if you can keep a fairly objective level head throughout and support your team to maintain that focus and give them that clarity on exactly where you're going directionally and exactly what they want to keep their eye on. And I hope you found this valuable in helping you set yourself up for the most success possible as we go through the second half of Q1 and really get into the full swing of things this year. I will see you again next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. If you have not yet taken our scalability assessment, I invite you to head to leanoutmethod.com/assessment and take our interactive assessment that's going to help you look at how simple, how sustainable, and how scalable your business currently is. It includes personalized recommendations of where to focus next to get your time back, to increase your impact, increase your profits, and ultimately step into your rich, fulfilled life. And finally, we'd love to see you inside our signature program, Simplify to Scale. You can head to leanoutmethod.com/ops to find all of the details on how we can help you uplevel your operations and get out of the day-to-day of your business.